Have you ever considered whether you truly need to work? 15 years ago, Okada Toshio warned university students they might never find employment. Now that reality has arrived. Employment rates have dropped to 61%. 7 years since Okada declared the end of traditional employment. In universities, 40% of graduates cannot find jobs. Marriage systems are collapsing and money is losing its value. Okada argued 3 endings are happening simultaneously. A man in his 20s consulted Okada about choosing life on welfare. Okada said bluntly, "Do not ask for advice if you plan to abuse the system." Yet he also confirmed that choice is not necessarily wrong. In the original Aladdin story, he was a NET living with his mother, but possessed extraordinary talent. What does it mean to be valuable without working? Let us hear Okada Toshio's perspective.
Let's get started. We might not get jobs. We might not work our whole lives. That's what I'll talk about today. I'll talk for about 2 hours. Then we'll have a Q&A for about an hour. That's the plan, anyway. By the way, we have 6 cameras set up here. The tape is 80 minutes long. So we need to wrap it up in around 1 hour in. That is, around 5 or so. I'll switch to a casual chat. When I switch to the casual chat, I'll read some of the host tweets. So if you were mentioned in those tweets, feel free to jump in at any time, even while I'm talking. Please don't hold back. I might use that as material, or respond to it. The reason I'm doing this with host tweet is that when it's a lecture, if I ask if there are any questions later, no one really raises their hand. The fact that Japanese people don't is a real issue, I think. Even if I say, come on, it's not that everyone has nothing it's more about whether it's okay to ask. You start to come up with ideas. So when I think about going home, suddenly people from the front of the apartment gather and start asking all sorts of questions. For that reason, everyone might have something they want to ask, but if they ask loudly, and a mic is pointed at them, it might be a bit awkward. This is something that Japanese people turning it into a matter of character, saying we shouldn't change the system. The same goes for the rice reduction when we have a problem. We think about whether Japan should change, whether the government should change like this, or we say that Japanese people should, students shouldn't. And if you have a question, it turns into a slogan but that's not the point. It's more about a little bit of creativity. I think we can manage with just a bit of, so let's hand out post-its. Everyone, these post-its. If you write something without asking you'll have leftover sticky notes. And that would be a waste, right? It's a waste, so let's make something cool out of it, like Okada-san. It's totally fine to stick it around here. Do you like it or something? Since I got it, I have to use it all. Just use it however you want. We might not get jobs, but we might. The reason I'm talking about this is, about 5 years ago, I wrote a book called It's about the profits of small creators. I was recommended to the program's producer. They featured it on the show. I talked about it there too. At that time I was discussing the Osaka style. In fact, they brought up the Osaka style as an example. I'm still teaching that now. And I have the Osaka style. In that kind of setting, classrooms with about 200 people get filled up. Classrooms with about 200 people, and this happens every year for me. I give practical exercises or teach ways of thinking. I also conduct hands-on training. So then, if I'm lucky, about 3 out of those 200. So, you want to become a pro. Out of 200 people, only 3. This is quite. It really depends on luck in the end. So what kind of vocational school? for anime, games, or even if you go to a manga vocational. Out of 200 people, only Okada-san, that's pretty They say that's impressive. But that's the reality. Now, what about the remaining one? Well, they can't become professionals. So, those who couldn't make it end up wasting 4 years. Their parents pay 1.4 for 4 years of tuition, and they realize they're not cut out for it. It's a bit exaggerated to say it's like, but you have to graduate with a heavy heart. Only 3 out of 200 don't follow a system where it's not a setup or a structure. In what world do 200 people go to a professor's class and only 3 make it? There's no self-help professor like that. That means you're already in college. That's true, but to become a professional freelancer, the structure and mechanisms themselves get weird. There's no such structure, but we should question the system. That's the first point. The second point. Over the past 8 years, being a professional means it's a theory of women. And I wrote a book about love. For me, that's quite something. That's true, but in that book, I wrote that the system of love and marriage is breaking down. The system of love and marriage is, when I say this, yesterday, I was looking for a name. When I talked to a girl who's 1 year old, leading the conversation myself, this girl is getting along well with her current boy, and they're going to get married. And I won't do business, just live. That's what it is. The hard reality of marriage now, it's this expensive. It all depends on love and merit. You shouldn't think that way, because you believe it. This is my thought. For that kind of thinking, first love now. The girl I'm crazy about pushes back, but on site. Right now, the marriage rate is at a standstill. In other words, that means, what could it be? We're in an era where normal people, until now, the marriage rate was around 15. Even so, recently, there are a lot of people. It's totally normal not to get married. They said it's 64%, but this is the marriage rate. It's fine if you never get married. But from now on, the marriage rate will exceed 40. The divorce rate will exceed 20. It's the same as getting married. The social system wants to implement a certain system. People who can't do it, once it exceeds 30%, becomes something I think we should make public. The divorce rate among people is from those who don't really want to get married. I don't think there are that many people, like 40. It's not that. If given the chance, I would want to get, but I just can't. Marriage, or getting into marriage, counts as being part of the divorce rate. But even if you get married once, you end up in the divorce statistics. Even if you divorce, you still count among the successful ones. When that happens, 40% of people can't even. That's a sign that society, this society's marriage system, is failing. I think that's evidence of it. Now, let's talk about the employment rate. This is news from August 4th, from Sankey News. For college graduates, looking at the figures, 100 have an employment rate of 61. A survey by the Ministry of Education has been released. In other words, after graduate, only 61% of people actually find jobs. Right? What this means is, it includes those who go on to graduate. But if we say those who go to graduate, what this implies is that, in our society, people go to university because, after all, they go all the way. They're trying to improve their living conditions. Yet, despite wanting to find it, everyone is seriously trying to get high. But about 40% of people end up unable to find job that has entered this situation. This means that it's not just an individual effort. Probably the generation of parents, or uncles and aunts, or older brothers and sisters of those currently job hunting lived in a time when hard work, I think they find it really tough. Those currently job hunting are people they respect. Parents are fine too. Teachers are fine. If you ask if everyone works hard together, they only go but that's because 40% of people can't find. The world is something no one has experienced that. No one at all. We're coming into such a society. That's what I mean. Like I said earlier, something. What could it be? Can't do it. People who wanna but can't. When it exceeds, I think this society will collapse, and I've been considering we're living in such, and I want to convey that it's 3 points. First, employment is over. It's the end. The main part was. But is it a two-chan? I don't really know. It's already over. It's called content. In other words, that just doesn't work anymore. And at each university, I'm thinking, the concept of it's already over, the main story. Second, why did that happen? Plus, there's a higher cause, that is, money. The end of the main story. Slowly, the end attitude. This end attitude doesn't mean money or that I don't have any money. It's not that. Until now, with overwhelming, if we just have that. Money is really starting to, it's gotten worse. To put it simply, Dom has crashed. I mean Dom. It's not worth thanking. Even if I use it, it's gotten worse. No matter how much I can use it all out. Which one is it? Furthermore, in that kind of way. But money is the third one. So in response to, here's the prescription, like this. From now on, I want to be tough. It's already less. That means, interestingly, the way of living as a hero. I talked about it I'm talking about this. Today's goal. That's right. In about an hour and it should be happening by now. So, let's talk along this outline. We'll start with the end of employment. Businesses. The end of the mindset. Let's discuss that. Well, if you could share your thoughts. Entering some company. Everyone. It's about that weekend. If you get into some company, there's a sense of exactly. Good evening. Today, we're doing a live consultation for psychopaths. And I'm basically dressed the same as Joker here. Except I'm not wearing the red jacket. Well, this live consultation for psychopaths is about people who don't really consider others' feelings. And the pros and cons of consulting a psychopath. The pro is that since they won't lie, they'll answer honestly, whatever they think. They won't sugarcoat things, so that's a benefit. But the downside is that they might say things you really don't want to hear. So, there's a high chance of hearing unpleasant things. And I tend to say pretty harsh things myself. So for those of you writing comments, please don't ask for harsh advice or say harsh things. Otherwise, when I read the comments, it might get tough. When everyone turns off the comments, well, it leads to that situation and no one benefits. So and if more people turn off comments, those who write comments lose out. So I'm kindly asking you to be a little nice. Also, the letter that was picked today, or rather, the one from August, is about this August sticker. I thought about making it for my 63rd and 3rd birthdays. It's the sticker of Tao Kuan, who is making a comeback after a while. Well, it does feel like something else. But the chubby cheeks are nicely recreated. I'll give this to you. Thank you. Also, I was thinking about the first house I visited. It's tomorrow, August 2nd, from tomorrow night. To be precise, late, since it's past midnight. It would be better to say it that way. Well, starting from late Monday night on NHK General, the official rebroadcast of the video, they will show 2 episodes a day, and it seems they will air the whole series in about a week. You definitely should watch it. Everyone, please set your recording reservation. NHK's official videos are worth watching. I ended up watching it once, bought the DVD box, and when the Blu-ray came out, I repurchased it on Blu-ray. Well, it's not like I want to watch it 2 or 3 times, though. I think it's definitely worth watching or recording while it's being broadcast, and because of things like that. I think NHK has its significance. You should watch it, so it was a suggestion to make a reservation. Let's get started from the beginning today. So, here's the first live consultation. You know, my throat. Actually, since around Thursday, it's been not quite right, so I'll try not to raise my voice too much. So, this is from Shigemi Kazuki, a 20-something male. I really hate non-regular employment. I've been a full-time employee, but I wasn't very capable. I couldn't manage well. With the current job market being so tough, I couldn't even move out from, and I'm thinking of restarting my career as a part-time lecturer. No matter what, I can't escape my own incompetence and the state of society, which is, well, I get what you're saying. It feels like there are a lot of complex phrases, doesn't it? So, I might use welfare to move out and work as a freelancer in programming. Doing small activities, or if that doesn't work out, I'll cling to living as a non-working adult and struggling to get by in Japanese society. I keep writing about my struggles. I don't have the achievements to bounce back, even though I graduated from university. They'll see I'm incompetent and realize hiring me is a waste. In today's society, I wanted to show my reaction, and it was an option to build a life while misusing the system and not, since it ends there. There aren't any questions written down, but I'll summarize it myself. First, this person hasn't graduated from university, but has been a full-time. They wrote a lot, but it's time to summarize. They have a past of having been a full-time employee. Currently, they're living at home and unemployed. Their hope from here is to use welfare, and ideally, to become independent, which is pretty much this. Honestly, I don't like people like this. But I don't think it matters how I feel about them. Just because I dislike them, if they want this way of thinking to be validated, they should consult a wider audience. They might say to use welfare if things are tough. He might be kinder in his thinking, but I'm strict. I honestly think, what are you living for? Since he's written about misusing the system himself. So, you have that awareness. In other words, you're aware that you're eating with the money we earn and pay taxes with, so you shouldn't consult others about it. You're writing that you're abusing the system yourself, so you shouldn't be asking others for advice. Just keep it to yourself. So, I'll send you a sticker, so please be quiet. Thinking like that isn't a bad thing at all, and probably, it's not wrong. I said something harsh because I don't like it, but it's not wrong. It's not wrong. But since it's not something people usually praise, just keep it to you. I'm thinking about things like that. Let's talk about Aladdin. It's the hidden story behind Disney's Aladdin. The setting is China. It's a story about Aladdin. This is Disney's Aladdin, which grossed $264 million domestic. Its worldwide box office total is $727 million. The 1992 animated version of Aladdin made $200 and $500 million worldwide, so it's a big hit compared to that. It's a success as a remake. In America, it's already at number 3 while in Japan, it's still holding the number 1. This week's Okada Toshio seminar is but don't worry, there won't be too many spoilers. So what kind of story is Aladdin, to begin with? As I mentioned earlier, the setting is China. This is Aladdin finding a magic lamp in a mysterious cave. This is a version of Aladdin illustrated by British painter Walter Crane in the late 19th century. And this is Aladdin. He looks completely Chinese. So, is this an arrangement? The original story from the Arabian Nights also mentions that Aladdin is from China. Over here, we have Arabian Nights. But Aladdin isn't included in the previous week's version. It's actually in this so-called fluke version of Arabian Nights. So, for those who saw Aladdin, buying the previous week's version, you have to read this one, but it also mentions China here. At the beginning, there was a poor tailor in ancient China. He had a son named Aladdin. The tailor tried hard to teach Aladdin how to work. But he just played around, and eventually, the tailor died from worrying too much about it, as he was always playing with delinquents in the streets. The tailor's wife, Aladdin's mother, spun thread and kept feeding Aladdin, but he didn't work at all. He was the epitome of an ungrateful child, and he turned 15. It starts off with quite a shocking opening, where Aladdin is at NET and making his mother work even after his father died, a real piece of work. However, Aladdin had a secret he didn't even know about. What was it? Well, Aladdin's ancestor had hidden an incredible treasure in a cave. Only a descendant can open the marble lid at the entrance. This coincidence happens, but hardly anything is written about the ancestor. It was probably deemed unimportant to the story. In fact, it just casually mentions that the ancestor hid a huge treasure, and the marble lid can't be opened. Then, from far away in Africa, a black magician arrives. The magician had been after this treasure for over 30 years and finally found Aladdin, likely around Shanghai, which is the eastern edge of China. He called out to Aladdin. Yes, that's it. Honestly, it's hard to tell which country this is from anymore. There are beautiful women who have experienced war, but in places like China, Japan has become a bit of a mystery, right? The Europe of the late 19th century, when this picture book was written, was all about, and the illustrator Crane was also influenced by that. When it comes to the distant land of Miyako in China, one might read the original text and think, isn't that about Japan? Or, isn't there a treasure trove of gold and silver in Japan? So, it ends up looking more Japanese than in Japan. Aladdin is born from a story set in the Arabian desert. But in Europe, it was actually common for it to be set in China. By the late 19th century, isn't Aladdin a story about China or maybe Japan? Why did this happen? It might be a good question for Japan. But at least, even in Disney's animations, we started to think of it as a story from a desert country. I'll talk about that now. Surprisingly, there's a rhythm to it. Thank you. Well then, let's get started.